Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Presented by Junk Be Gone, Phoenix Conversions.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome into the Sports Source. Thank you for joining us. We're happy to have you. Tennessee falls in basketball. We'll talk about that. The Vol football program closes on a heater in recruiting season, and Philip Fulmer's talking. We'll cover all that. Jeremy Pruitt talking too. It sounds like they're happy about the way things are going. We got a lot to cover, and we got a packed house here to do it. Let's get right into today's show. Our first segment brought to you by our friends at Phoenix Conversions. And if you work out of a van or truck and need the biggest selection of racks, shelving, sliding cargo trays, give Phoenix Conversions a call or stop by their showroom. Whether you're talking about one truck or 100 that you're trying to outfit with your fleet, they can do it. They can outfit your vehicles to perfection and make you much more efficient in terms of being on the job. Phoenix Conversions. They've been doing it since 1987. That's a lot of years. They're pretty doggone good. All right. Let me welcome in the first round of panelists here today. We have right here from WNML, Josh Ward. We have right there Mark Pankratz, who's former Vol basketball coach. And we have right there Mike Strange, legendary Hall of Fame sports writer in the state of Tennessee. All right. An up and down week for the Vols. They go on the road at Alabama, fall behind 15 points. They battle their way back. They get the win, and you're starting to think, okay, well, maybe they found something here. They come home, they play Kentucky. And the Wildcats kind of kept him. It was like a big brother, little brother. They just kind of kept him at bay the whole time. You never thought that Tennessee was really going to steal that game. Had their opportunities, which I'll let you talk about. But for the most part, I thought that Kentucky just looked like they'd outmanned them. And unfortunately for Tennessee, it's the first time they've lost to Kentucky at home after 4 straight wins by Rick Barnes and crew. So it was unusual to hear them chanting "Go Big Blue" at the end of the game at Thompson Bowling Arena. Overall views of the game, and I'll start with Josh and then Mike, and we'll let Mark back clean up here. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought the Kentucky game, or the result, was probably fairly predictable. A game where Kentucky looks like the better team, because it is. Yeah. And the crowd's into it. Tennessee would go on a short run here to try to push back, and then Kentucky would push back again. In the end, Kentucky's just the better team. The result against Alabama probably gave hope that Tennessee could come back and win, because you'd just seen it a few days earlier. It's just that Kentucky's a much better team, more talent, and it won out in the end.
I think there's comparisons between Alabama and Kentucky there in terms of their guards and what they can do. And I thought Kentucky's not just a better team, but played a really good road game against Tennessee.
Shot well.
Yeah. And you wonder, I thought Tennessee played hard and having fault with their effort, just couldn't make enough shots.
Which is a theme, and we'll get to that. We're going to have a segment a little later about this team and just how few shots they hit. It's kind of eye-opening at times, so that's a little later.
There were times when one shot, to their credit, where one shot would have made a difference.
Yeah, I mean, their guards were the difference, in my opinion. I mean, yes, Vescovi and Bowden, I think, combined and had about 34 points, and Jalen Johnson did some things. But their guards had 56 points. They shot 50% from 3, where our guards were 6 for 20. And Kentucky had 38 points in the paint to our 18. They attacked the rim. Unlike Alabama, we were able to stay in the game because Alabama turned the ball over. They shot poor three-point shots, whereas Kentucky didn't. They played like a veteran basketball club, and that's a difference about this Kentucky team than in years past, where they're all young. Where this year they got Nick Richards, you got Ashton Hagans, and now you mix in some guys like Maxey and Quigley, and they had a bench guy and Jusang step up and go 3 for 3 from the perimeter. We haven't seen that very often, and our guards put up some points, but they took a lot of shots too. And defense, I know we'll talk about, but I think our offense is where it starts and where our struggles are going to continue.
Yeah, and let's mention this. Rick Barnes will go ahead and put up the quote. He was asked yesterday about how much the team misses Lamonte Turner, and his quote was, "You miss that kind of defensive presence that he brings." When you go back and look at tape like we do from a year ago and then what they do now, that's the biggest thing we don't have with our team, that on-ball defensive pressure. Your thoughts, Mark, on the defense?
Well, my first thought of that is Yeah, maybe Lamonte Turner, but it's Jordan Bone, right? I mean, Jordan Bone was the guy that he started that spark with defensive pressure, but then also Lamonte was able to do that as well because they had more depth at that position. We don't have that. One, Vescovi, that is not what he is good at. He's not good at putting that pressure, but we don't have the depth to be able to have fresh legs to continue to put that ball pressure. But my other, on the defensive side, is we're still top 20, top 30 in the country in defense. I think our focus needs to be on the offense. How can we get guys better shots? Because I think our defense did enough to keep us in that basketball game yesterday.
You missed Josiah Jordan-James in that game yesterday. He's the guy that could maybe stay in front of those, quickly, Maxey, Hagans, all those guys are good in that Calipari dribble drive attack, and I think they missed James again yesterday, too.
And Bart says he's simply just not been healthy all year, but you talk about he's missed, 3 games in a row now?
Yeah.
And the reports have been knee, hip, groin. So my guess is it's something to do with his leg, or all 3 of those things to do with his leg, but it's almost, you don't want to say it's a wasted year, but there were such high hopes for him coming in this year. The injuries have held him back. Turner going out changed his role a little bit. It's just been a disappointment, is all you can say about the arrival of that 5-star and the way it turned out for him.
When his role all of a sudden became bigger,
yeah.
And if he's not at 100%, there's probably like a compounding effect, isn't there? If James is asked to do more, he's not at 100%, he breaks down a little bit, you've lost Turner, Vescovi comes in, as you mentioned, defensively, that's not his strength probably, and then you have guys playing a lot of minutes. Guys are probably more tired in the last 5 minutes as well. Against a team like Kentucky that's deep, talented in the backcourt, makes it even harder.
Well, and what's interesting with Euros too, and now you see the pressure on our defense. We talked about Vescovi and Euros. God, they're putting those guys in the ball screen actions, and Euros is just not. And Vescovi, they're not used to the quickness of a Kentucky type team. They put those 2 guys in ball screen action. You got all sorts of lanes to be able to drive, and you miss that opportunity. Those guys getting to be able to evolve in the preseason, and good scouting and good teams are able to take advantage of it.
Let's talk just for a second here about Santiago Vescovi. Rick Barnes said right when he arrived, before Turner announced he was out, he said, "Well, he's probably not going to play." This is a guy that's not going to play. And right here, we tried to temper expectations earlier. When he signed, we thought, okay, how much of a role can he play? Will he even get on the court, or is he just going to help in practice? Well, he was ready for American basketball as soon as he hit the ground. Where would this team be if he hadn't parachuted in January the way he did? I mean, considering the Turner injury, which no one was counting on before the season, and the James injury now, if you didn't have Vescovi, I mean, this is not a good year. This could have been a terrible year without him. I mean, just the impact he's made has been remarkable.
Yeah, he's, he had that amazing debut game with all the threes and all the turnovers, and I give him credit. He's really cut down on his turnovers for the most part, and figuring out what he can do well. I can't imagine. You'd have Bowden and Devontae Gaines playing a lot of point. I don't know.
Well, I think they probably would not have beaten Missouri and South Carolina. Would be 2 ones that were an obvious ones that he had a direct result of a win. But outside of that, Vanderbilt, they probably still beat Vanderbilt.
I wonder about the road game in Alabama, though, if you don't have a...
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the biggest thing that
you're several games worse with that.
Yes, the biggest positive is going to be you've got a guy in that position that has experience coming into next year to put more pressure on the Jaden Springers, the Bailey, the kid that's sitting out as a transfer. That's the biggest advantage to him being eligible and coming this season, and what that's going to bring next year, not necessarily this year. And
I would also say I think you see flashes from these guys. I mean, you've seen flashes from Plavsic where you say, okay, Barnes will get something out of it. I saw where you responded to a tweet yesterday from somebody saying, well, these guys aren't SEC players. Maybe not all SEC players right now, but I'm not willing to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. I still think when you look at the way Barnes has developed players over the past, when you look at this team moving forward, just look at Yves Pons, what he is this year compared to what he was the previous 2 years. Mm-hmm. I think there is reason for optimism, especially when you get a guy like Vescovi who's already hitting the ground running. But I think some of these other guys are going to continue to get better. My guess is Josiah Jordan-James will have a better sophomore year than he has freshman year.
Yeah, we're missing the 1 or the 2 or even the 3 the alpha dogs. We don't have that go-to guy that then all of a sudden makes all these other good role players that much better because they're more comfortable in that role. If we had one or two of those type of guys, then all these guys would be better. You can't have a roster full of alpha dogs. You also can't have a roster full of role players.
Without any.
Because if you do, you're going to not be a very good basketball club either direction.
All right. Tell you what, we got to catch a break right now. We'll have more basketball a little bit later. We'll talk specifically about how this Tennessee offense ranks historically. For some of you longtime Vol fans, you're going to be wishing I don't show you these stats, but we'll show them. When we come back, though, Tennessee finished on a heater in terms of signing day. We'll be back to talk a lot about Tennessee's signing class and how they finished up, turning a couple of key prospects. That's next on the Sports Source.
Hey, when you're away from home, catch us on Facebook Live, our YouTube channel, or on sportsource.tv.
Let's do it.
This is the Sports Source.